Music is an amazing thing. Music is a universal language because it means something to everyone. However, in the Western world, music as we know it was influenced mostly by the development of music in Europe. Over centuries of being written, played, and developed, the works of Western music reflect the feeling of their composers as well as express opinions on certain political and social events of their time. Each work of European music is a piece of history. In the Middle Ages, people lived in the midst of chaos and there was little time for the arts. However, the Renaissance saw the birth of a kind of music that had never been seen before. The reason for the expansion of musical ideas during the Renaissance was humanism. The artistic heritage of ancient Greece and Rome inspired people to create new music. The invention of the printing press allowed written music to be spread around, and the Reformation changed religious ideas and made religion, and therefore religious music, a more personal thing. Throughout Europe, there were a handful of professional musicians who were highly sought after. Many of them were singers because choral music was popular and closely associated with the church. A wide variety of styles were played, including masses, motets, madrigals, chansons, accompanied songs, and instrumental dances. Notable composers of this time include Palestrina from Rome, Lassus from Flanders, Victoria of Spain, and William Byrd from England. In the late Renaissance, ideas concerning art and music changed, and music took a step forward into the next era. Derived from the Portuguese word barroco, meaning misshapen pearl, baroque is an adjective used to describe the ornate, extravagant, and heavily ornamented music of this age. The transition into Baroque music began when groups of creative intellectuals, such as the Florentine Camerata of Florence, met in the late Renaissance to discuss trends in music and drama. They rejected the ideas of Renaissance music and sought to introduce a style that involved solo voice, and thus, opera was born. Music was played at faster tempos than before and relied upon heavy and often improvised ornamentation to give it its extravagant sound. While Baroque music is heavily listened to and is a part of almost every classical music repertoire today, many early critics believed it was chaotic, used too much ornamentation, and was unpleasant to the ear. Improvements in musical instrument technology allowed for expansions in range and dynamic capability, and bigger sounds were created through the use of larger ensembles, as well as the pipe organ heard here. Baroque music had close ties with absolutism. With the rise of centralized courts came a demand for court music. Louis XIV of France employed the famous composer Jean-Baptiste Lully to be the sole composer of his court music. Frederick the Great of Prussia was a fan of Johann Sebastian Bach, employed his son as one of his court musicians, and was himself a talented flute player. The musical system of tonality became the dominant musical system in Western music and still is today. New genres, such as the cantata, concerto, and sonata were invented during the Baroque period. Notable Baroque composers include Johann Sebastian Bach, George Frederick Handel, and Antonio Vivaldi. Even though classical is a term used to describe an entire category of Western music, there was actually a period of classical music called the Classical Period. Just like Renaissance music was influenced by humanism and Baroque music was influenced by the struggles of the changing times, Classical Period music was influenced greatly by classicism and the Enlightenment. A new revival of the ideals of antiquity led to music that was considerably more formal than before, with clearer divisions, brighter contrasts, and an overall logical simplicity. However, despite these revisions, music was still tightly linked to court culture and absolutism. The size of orchestras also increased, leading to louder and more dramatic music. Notable composers of this time period include Joseph Haydn, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Ludwig van Beethoven, and Franz Schubert. The next major musical era was the Romantic era. It was also inspired by a broader movement, the art, literature, and intellectual movement of Romanticism. It rejected the clear-cut, rational mindset of the Enlightenment and opposed the attempted rationalization of nature and emotions. This movement became more influential during the Industrial Revolution, when Romantics opposed the ideals of industrialization. However, industrialization helped the music scene as a whole. Instruments were now more readily available because they were being assembled in workshops and factories. The purpose of music also changed. Before, the privilege of hearing a professional orchestra perform was something reserved for the aristocracy. The dominant composers were members of royal courts. During the Romantic period, this changed. Orchestras, which were now considerably larger, played at festivals and concerts, with many people paying to attend. Music had finally been brought to the middle class. Nationalism was an important theme of Romantic music. Jean Sibelius, a Finnish composer, wrote the piece you hear now, called Finlandia, about Finland's increasing influence and its desire for independence from Russian control. Notable Romantic composers include Gioacchino Rossini, Felix Mendelssohn, and Robert Schumann. There is no doubt that music is an important part of our lives today. Even though Western music has evolved over centuries and centuries, even the oldest musical works will remain timelessly important.